Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. I'm super excited. We've got another awesome guest today. And as always, I'm here with my lovable dad, Mr. Mark Perlman. Dad, what's up, buddy?
Doing good, Corey. Great to be here with you and great to be here with Matt. Looking forward to it.
Yes. So let me just preface this real quick on where we met, Matt. So, a lot of you have been with us on the podcast and we're having lots of fun and interviewing lots of guests. And one of my team members on my team, Jody Alcock, said, hey, you got to meet this guy, Matt. He's got a great story to tell, a redemption story and a fathering story. And I think he'd be a great guest for your podcast. And so I trust Jody immensely. And so therefore, we've got Matt Mullins on the podcast with us today. So Matt, can you hear me loud and clear?
I can. Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear, brother. Well, welcome to the Nurturing Fathers podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really cool to have been invited to be a part of this. So I'm excited. I have an interesting story. I'm excited to share it.
I'm going to ask you about that. And just so everybody knows too, not only is Matt going to share his story, but Matt's also becoming, a facilitator of the Nurturing Fathers program. And he's going to, part of his story is to be able to help other dads in his community through the Nurturing Fathers program. So we're super happy and excited to have you on the team. So Matt, my dad created this program in the beginning of telling his story, HISstory, right? His story. So we want to hear how you came to be who you are as a man and as a father. Take it away.
Sure. My journey starts in Las Vegas. We'll go back to my high school years, because that's when my transgression as an adult really began. My father traveled a lot up until we moved to Vegas. Actually, grew up in Southern California. He traveled 3 or 4 weeks a month. Every time he was gone was to better his position with his company, to provide no needs or wants or desires for us. When I hit about 14 years old, I started making bad choices. And he and my mother had a conversation saying, okay, either you're home or you're not. You got to make the choice for Matthew to be able to make his choice. He needs a solid foundation. So my dad took a step back, and he was a banker in his position to be there. And that's really when he and I's relationship started forming, but it wasn't without a few years of turmoil and bad choices on my end. Yeah, around 16, I had been picked on and bullied quite a bit. So around 16, I started making friends that I could be around, that I would not be picked on or bullied as much. But part of that came with a price that when something happened, I'd have to be involved. So I started hanging out with a group. We became pretty close and we got in a lot of trouble. We started getting involved with drugs and alcohol. And growing up in Vegas, it's a whole different lifestyle. So we were having hotel parties, this and that and this. And right around my senior year, I had a real close friend of mine, Janine, came up to me and says, hey, Matt, you're kind of a jerk when you're high. And kind of stepped back, and coming from her, it meant a lot to me. So I took a step back and said, well, I don't want to be a jerk. So I started talking to a couple other people like, yeah, well, when you're messing up, you mess up pretty good, and you're good at it. So kudos to you for going all in, but you probably shouldn't. So I took a step back, and that's really when I started forming the best relationship with my father. And through the midst of that, he told me that he had the same problem at the same age. He was addicted to methamphetamines. He was a cowboy, working 2 jobs, but the drugs kept him awake while he was in school getting his bachelor's degree. And then when he came down, he had met my mom. She was his high school sweetheart. She says, all right, dude, you've had your fun. You're in your career. It's time to stop. And that's when he did. So that was kind of the introduction for my father and I. And we became just the best of friends after that. Go shoot pool 4 or 5 times a week. In that, I was encouraged to finally, I'm in my 20s now, been in and out of college, blew a buttload of money, burned through a couple opportunities to have my degree paid for scholarships. And it was time to, more or less poop or get off the pot. And I made the choice to buckle down, and I studied my butt off for another 2.5 years. With a 2.5, I graduated with a degree in secondary education. And the whole time through that process, I worked for Outback Steakhouse. I was with them for 11 years in total. And by the time I had graduated, I was I was a corporate guy with the company. So we oversaw 13 stores. It was a super fun job. But again, a job that was revolved around a lot of fun. So I find myself getting into alcohol and drinking a lot. Not just that few beers when you go out with your buddies, but 2 or 3 times a week, I'm going really hard. And I had a high school sweetheart of mine, Leah. She and I were together for quite some time, on and off. And she came up and said, "Hey, man, why don't we just move away from all this?" Yeah, okay, let's do it, Leah. So boozing one night, we got a map of the Pacific Northwest, Oregon in specifics, and I threw a dart at it. And wound up in Salem. So I did some work on Salem, and we're like, yeah, we're not going to Salem. Let's go to Portland. Seems like there's more there for us. So she and I moved to Portland kind of on a new wing. I stepped down from a corporate position with Outback and was just managing a store at this point because that's all they had for me, which was great. We kind of cleaned ourselves up. We got pregnant. We were going to have twins. About 6 months in, we found out that one of the twins didn't have a heartbeat and the other was going to grow. If it did survive the pregnancy, it was going to have a lot of physical and potentially mental disorders. And at this point, it wasn't too late to abort. So we decided to terminate the pregnancy. A very hard decision. And in the process, and some bad doctors, only one of the 2 came out when it was supposed to. And for some reason, the other half of one stayed in, and she became septic. And it was a pretty awful experience for us. Blood transfusions, 3 months in the hospital on her end. She, like I, had an addictive personality. Coming out of the hospital, they had given her some painkillers, and she got super, super hooked on those. And man, I remember going out for about 8 hours one day to run errands and grocery shop and that kind of stuff, come back to the house, and she was still pretty sick. Weak, not sick. Came home and she was gone. House was empty of her stuff, and didn't see her. I got a phone call about 3 months later that she had passed away from an overdose. So I kind of suppressed all that. And, I've been 7 months since I had seen anybody. Fast forward a little bit, and I'm still with Outback Steakhouse and kind of was a hermit at that point. This new team member comes in as a transfer, and I hire, and, all my friends are going, "Oh, man, she thinks you're cute. She thinks you're super awesome, and we're all going to head out. You should come with us. We're going to go do a corn maze." I said, "All right, why not? I'll give it a shot." So her name was Laura. We wound up hanging out for a couple of weeks, and then Dave Matthews was going to play at the Gorge in Washington State, and we all decided to go, and I invited her. So we went and had a super good time, 5-day camping trip, Dave Matthews. It was a blast. 17 of us went. We had this amazing campground, and she and I stopped talking after that. And 3 months later, she called me and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. By the way, it's yours." Okay. Well, at that point, I think everything had just resurfaced and come out of this blister of sorts that was my heart at that moment. And she really wanted nothing to do with me at that point. I'm gonna move to Michigan. I'm gonna be a mom, and more or less, thanks but no thanks. I'm super frustrated. I'm gonna take it out on you because I planned on making a life here in Oregon, and now I can't. And I said, "Well, I understand, but if you're keeping the child, I'm going to be a part of it." After everything that I went through, it just was a no-brainer. So she reluctantly agreed that that was a good choice. And a few months after she moved here, she was getting ready to give birth. And 2 weeks before my daughter was born, I made a move, which is it's exactly how I wound up in Michigan. So I'd never been here before. Outback didn't have a position for me. And I coincidentally had a college roommate 10 years prior that lived in Michigan. So I called him and said, "Hey, man," his name was Dan. "I know we haven't talked in a while, but I need a place to crash for a couple of weeks until I figure my life out." I told him what was going on. He said, "Matt, as long as you need, man. Yeah, you were a good roommate in college. I can only imagine that you need a good roommate now." So through that, his girlfriend at the time was working for a company out here that had a similar position to the one that I was doing with Outback available out here. And that's kind of how I got my start. And then she and I wound up opening a consulting firm out here a few years later. In that time frame, though, Laura, my child's mother, and I kind of had a formation of a true bond in regards to our daughter and our relationship. And none of it was ever boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife material. It was more like brother and sister. And I think we were able to form that because we never had a foundation for anything else. There was no unsuccessful foundation. There was no relationship before that failed. There wasn't even at this point any hate. I'm here and so is she. And I think for our relationship, we were always good with Leela. My daughter's name is Leela. We were always great with her. And in regards to what we do, what we don't do. But I think for all of us, we got super good when she met her current husband. Turned out that, I think a lot of dads, when they have a split family, meet this other guy, right? You don't want to like him. But I'm sitting there, and the first time I met him, I don't know, it was Christmas dinner at her mom's house. And he's like, "Why the hell is your ex here?" And I'm going, "Why would you not tell me he's coming?" And so we sat there and didn't want to like each other. And about 2 hours later, I'm going, "You know what, man? You're cool. I can't not like you." Okay. So I stuck my hand out and says, why don't we just be friends? And he looked at me and goes, "I'll give it a shot." And that's how he and I started. And then it came to a point where my current wife, started dating. And I told her that, hey, I'm friends with my child's mother. I'm friends with my child's mother's boyfriend. And I'm really good friends with her family. And that's not going to change. So if you can't handle that, goodbye. There's the front door. That's my package. All right. So you're not just answering to me, you're answering to a whole family. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm in. Let's go. Let's do it." 2 years later, fast forward, my wife and I are getting married. My child's mother's doing her hair at the wedding. Her whole family's staying in our cabin. Right? And the true story. Her family didn't even want to stay in the cabin. My child's mother's family stayed in the cabin. Did my wife's hair for the wedding. Peter stood up in my wedding. Her husband.
What?
Yeah. Oh. And and now we do this all dads camping trip every year that we've been doing for the last 4 years. And 7 or 8 or 9 of us dads get together. I think last year we had 23 kids. Wow. And we camp for the whole week, and it's a blast. Wow. So I guess long story long, here we are, right? It wasn't easy 100% of the time. I show the glory and the success of it, but there's a lot of hardships involved, especially the first few years where we're trying to figure out who we are with each other. And I think the thing that we were able to do, all 4 of us, was take our pride out of the situation and say, okay, this is our situation. It's not going to change. So we can make a choice right now to be good at it or not. So let's go ahead and be good at it and bring a level of diplomacy into our friendship, that this is not only just a friendship, but a business as well. When it comes to financials with our child, who pays for what, her college, what are we doing there? And fortunate for me, I have similar and like thinking individuals in our congregation that is our family. So this quilt pattern wound up being uplark and unique, but successful in a lot of ways where we're fortunate in avenues that others aren't. Wow. I see a lot of my friends who are struggling single mothers or single fathers who don't have that line of support. And I've got a couple really good friends that over the years said, "You know what, Matt, because of what you've experienced, I now have with mine." Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah. So in a certain sense, without trying, you became a role model to others just by watching and learning.
There's been some discussions, I can't say arguments, but some heavy discussions, right? Even when, yesterday, Laura, my child's mother, and I have been doing homeschooling, right? And we have this concept of integrity with our child who's 9 years old. And listen, integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching, right? Mm-hmm. So she's lost that before and regained the ability of trust from us to kind of venture on her own and be a little more independent. So we gave her that, and I set up at our office this TV screen that she can plug her computer into and listen to music while she's doing her homeschooling without class time. And as it turns out, she failed at that miserably with no integrity. And we caught my daughter in a lie. She had a math test and she only did 5 problems of it. She told me she was done, and turns out she only did 5 problems of the 30. So as a result, her bad choices got her a non-passing grade, and because she lied and didn't have integrity, she's grounded for a month. But her mother calls me because she finds all this out, and she's like, "What? You gave her a room all by herself without being monitored? And what were you thinking?" And I'm going, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. I did. I trusted her. I am not going to be responsible for her bad choices. She has to be responsible for that." Okay. And, a couple minutes later, she's like, I'm sorry. I was just really mad. And, I know it's not your fault. And, I said, well, it's a mistake we're not making again. Right. So unfortunately, little girl's going to have a hard 2 months ahead of her for the semester of school, right across from dad.
But she's got the support around her of all the adults to sort of make it through. It's the best you can do is give them all that support, encouragement, show them the right path. Ultimately, it is up to them. But, with all my experience working with families and children, the families who give the proper role modeling like you did, kids, 98, 95% come around. It's the families who can't do that, where the kids flounder and make mistakes, and some of them go down a permanently bad path. But I love the fact, Matt, that you guys focused on integrity. It's not the word I thought of in listening to your story, but it's a perfect fit. What I thought of is at every point along the way, you, your father, and everybody that you mentioned acted like adults instead of adults acting like children. And it's a huge, huge win, because what that translated into is you took the high road, the best choice in many ways. But as far as for your child's best interest, every step along the way was really for the best interest of your children, as it turned out. All that you described is what kids most desperately want, whether it's permanently married families, divorced families, reconstituted families. Kids want their parents to function as adults and parents and both care for them. That's what really kids want. And you managed to pull that off in some pretty remarkable and unique circumstances.
Well, I appreciate that. For me, it was a no-brainer. But when people ask me, that was a big thing, why'd you do it? Well, it wasn't her choice to be here. So it shouldn't be my choice to not give her that. I had fun. My child's mother had fun at that moment. You were conceived of some sort of love at the moment. Whether we like each other or not, relationships change, right? I hope ours doesn't. I don't think it will, but it's not her fault she's here. So I shouldn't deprive her of that, of what of us,
And the relationship you have with her stepdad, or whatever we want to call him, the man that the mother is now married to, the relationship you have with Matt is extraordinary with that man.
Oh, we're very lucky. Yeah.
You're supporting him to be the best father that he can be, just by the kind of relationship that you have with him.
100%. And we don't make decisions now. We don't make any decision without talking to each other first. And it's evolved so much in our friendship and family, right? He's brother, his family, that their son calls me Uncle Matt. And now when they need a weekend away, their son Callan comes and stays with Uncle Matt.
Unbelievable. Right? You're like the poster child for this. I mean, I've done 8 Nurturing Fathers programs in the prison, and this conversation comes up every time. And there's this tension, right? Rightfully so, between the father and whomever the relationship the mom is in with the dad. And I never had a good story to tell. Now I have a good story to tell. Now I have the story to tell. The guy stood up in your wedding. I mean, that is unbelievable.
It was really cool. Yeah, very, very blessed. But it helps that he's a great guy. If he wasn't a great guy, it would be a little more challenging. But
absolutely.
But and that's absolutely true. But there are other people who just can't find it in themselves to do what you did, even if he was a great guy. Some people feel the need for him to be the enemy, which for the child is just a real losing proposition. But
I thought about it.
Yeah, you were able to see him as a great guy, become a really good friends. The fact that you guys camp together and the fact that you watch each other's kids, I mean, it's remarkable. It is what we would hope for every family who has mixed and matched children.
You hit it right on the head about ego. When it really boils down, it's ego, right? There's only room for one man in this daughter's life, and it's me, and that's your needs, not hers. Right. And that's kind of the communication that we try to express in the Nurturing Fathers program, which is the thing that I mentioned to the guys. I asked the question, is it possible for your daughter or son to have too much love? And the answer is usually no, and so there's room for him to be there. If he's a positive force, a positive influence in her life, there's room for both of you. There will never be another father. That's you, but there's room for another man, and that's him. And you guys have figured that out, and that's so
as much
beautiful.
a father as I am. It's not even, hey man, I don't feel that this was handled correctly. Okay, Peter, well, it's at a point in our relationship now where you're right, that wasn't handled properly. What can we do better next time? For me, at this point, it's with him the same way, even with his son. That there's no one right way to do anything. Let's pick each other's brain on it. He's just as much of a father. I mean, he's been in her life longer than he hasn't, right? In her life, he's had her since she was 2.
Right. And where this all started, your story started, is with your relationship with your own father and how wonderfully that relationship progressed. And from the work I do with fathers, that's the root that you grew from. And I can't help but think that a lot of what you were capable of doing is related to that wonderful foundation of having a really special relationship with your own dad.
He is, you know what? And my father is probably the greatest man I've ever met. It's kind of like, it reminds you of you two's relationship. But the guy's my mentor. He's been my rock. He's been my go-to, and my successes and failures, where I want to be the victim and throw a card. He says, well, it happens. You made a choice, and whether it was a good one or wasn't, this is the result. So it's your choice to move forward. And, I attribute that to my father is, motivation is garbage. When it comes down to being good or bad, or doing right and wrong, it's a choice. Okay, I'm motivated to eat that cookie because it's easy. Okay, I'm going to eat that cookie. I ate 4 of them before this conversation. All right, that was my motivation. It's short lasting. The choice not to eat that cookie, right, and the punishment I'm going to get tonight when I tell my wife I ate 4 of her cookies, it was a choice I made. Right. If it was bad, it was my choice.
Why don't you tell us a little bit, Matt, about what you're planning to do? You've got some Nurturing Fathers materials on the way, and you've got an interesting plan that grows out of all this.
Well, yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks for letting me explain a little bit of what we're trying to do. And honestly, all the advice I get, again, it's not about my pride; it's about making people's lives better, which is what our aim is. With the Nurturing Fathers program, obviously, we want to be in the prisons, but we also want to attack young parents and young kids and give them, along with the Nurturing Fathers program, the ability to plan their week, their life, and really learn how to budget, okay, is one aim. But what we've designed is a company called the Oakland Assistance Chapter. And the Oakland Assistance Chapter is Oakland County. That's where the Oakland part comes from. And essentially what we are designing is a program for an online community service program for people who are going through the court systems, who have made some bad choices and now have to do community service or are required to do counseling of sorts. So we've got a team of counselors who, at a discounted price, are going to do either one-on-one counseling or group counseling, which is a lot less expensive. And then online community service, for example, 5 hours will cost $35. So there's a thing to it, but it's still cheaper than catching an Uber to a place and an Uber back at $20 a pop multiple times. Now, outside of the operation of the business, the monies will go to 2 different programs. One is the booster clubs of local schools, not to the school itself, but to the people running the programs, to enable the pay-to-play activities. The coach has the ability to afford the play-to-play activities for those who can't afford it. And then have a surplus. So whether that be football pads, hockey pads, a clarinet, right, or a saxophone for a kid, or something for the robotics team, money's going to be generated to that. And then another part of the program is going to be a small classroom, kind of similar to the Nurturing Fathers, but it would be how to interview for a job, how to plan your week, and how to budget. Your 30% of your earned income is what pays your bills. And if you can maintain that and a 2.5 GPA the last year of your school, will give you a tuition reimbursement, a trade that you decide to go on if college is your thing. So if you want to go to culinary school or become an electrician, we'll give you, depending on the program, upwards of $500 reimbursement for that plan. And part of the reimbursement is we want you to struggle a little bit so that you own it. And if you're able to accomplish it, then yeah, here's your money, man. Good job. All right. And a lot of it is for those who are kind of on that seesaw, that teeter-totter. Okay, I can go down and be in the dark side. Or if I had some encouragement and support that I had, that a lot of other kids don't. I'll give you a couple examples where I had my family where these kids don't. To give that support to say, hey, somebody actually does care for you. Been in similar situations. You want to provide what you didn't have before, at least a little bit. You know, I think a lot of these kids who aren't affluent, so to speak, at home or financially are all they need is someone to say, "Hey, dude, I'm here." Right? You can fall back, and I'll actually answer the phone, because it's certainly not happening in the courts right now, even for young kids who are in trouble. And our main aim is to build a relationship with the local system out here. This is what we're doing. This is our reputation, right? And start attacking the prosecution office and how they handle these kids. Is it just a number, or are you really trying to do something good for them? All right?
Yeah.
So there's a program.
Yeah. And they're much more open to that than they have been in the past.
Yes.
Trying to do something positive, both for fathers and for kids, and make the situation better, as opposed to just collecting money or being punitive. They realize the best avenue to get what they want is to help these fathers and kids have better experiences and learn exactly what you're describing. So good work. I think the potential is excellent. And Corey and I will be certainly doing our part to help support what you're doing. Corey, anything from your...
Yeah, two last things from me, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. But just so you know, Matt, you're in Oakland County, Michigan. I was talking to you before this that we've got a lot going on with the Nurturing Fathers program in Michigan. In fact, Dad, not to put you on the spot here, but we just had some programs ordered from when you and I did our consultant training there a few years ago, right? In Flint, Michigan, right?
Genesee Intermediate Schools. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of connection there that we'll be able to help you with and hopefully be able to support you on. So my last question for you, Matt, is just to circle back and kind of close this out. Your story is awesome and amazing. And I plan on resharing it, hopefully with your blessing, in future Nurturing Fathers classes, because again, this bond between the males in our kids' lives, especially if there's more than one, is just profound and very powerful. I want to just take you back to the moments, like you said in the beginning. What were you able to do? Talk to a couple other dads that are listening right now that might be struggling with this. What can you tell them that would help them do whatever they can to form that relationship with the other man that might be in their child's life?
So, I met Peter, which is Leela's stepfather. And I did everything that a lot of other guys would do. I stalked his social media. What's this guy into? He's got pictures with random women. And what I was searching for is, okay, he's going to be around my child, whether I like it or not. I have to accept that. The biggest question is, though, is he going to be good to my child's mother? Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important. Okay. Now, whether I dislike her or not, and believe me, I wanted to dislike her a lot at times. Okay. Because she wasn't easy the first couple of years, and I wasn't easy either. But is he going to take care of her? Because if he's not, then we have to say something, right? It was about Leela, my daughter, 100%. It wasn't about my pride. It was, is she going to be in a happy home while she's with her mother? And if she is, then let's make the best of that, right? Our past are our past, whether we split up and we're together 10 years and she cheated on me or I cheated on her or whatever the circumstances are, it's not about that anymore. So I guess the biggest word of advice is to just have an open frame of mind, swallow your pride, because at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about making somebody else's life better. And believe me, it's easier said than done, but you have to. That's just in the world in general. To become a better you have to admit that you have failed, right? Or becoming better. So yet to other dads listening who are struggling right now, put yourself in their shoes and look at yourself in their shoes. And I certainly think that will help out in your future decision-making. All right. Think about what you said. And if that was said to you, how would you feel in the last conversation you had with somebody that you're struggling with?
Thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure. And we will certainly be keeping in touch.
It was beautiful, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to this. And it's certainly been great to have been introduced to both of you.
You're welcome to the team. This will not be our last conversation. We're super excited to have you on the Nurturing Fathers team. You're going to help a lot of men, a lot of families, and a lot of children, man. So we're super excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I really hope so.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Again, we'd love to hear your feedback on our different social channels. Facebook.com/Nurturing Fathers is a great place to connect with the Nurturing Fathers program. You can find all of our podcast episodes on iTunes and all the other different podcast platforms that you might be on. And we'll see you all again, or you'll be listening again very, very soon. So for my dad, Mark Perlman, Corey Perlman, see you later. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.